But we begin today's programme by talking to the ambassador for New York, who's been heard on many radio stations in the UK and seen on many TV stations. Peter Franklin, known as the Gabby Cabby, is New York's biggest fan. And I met up with him in Times Square, just off Broadway, and asked him, how has New York changed in the last year?
Well, actually, if you and I were to just walk away from this spot right now and walk around the city, you'd be very hard-pressed to know that anything ever happened. There's no place on the face of the earth that could take a hit like we did in terms of the financial aspect, the emotional aspect, the tension and all that.
What was it like for you being here in New York at that time?
Well, I had worked the night before, and when I got back to the garage that morning, and just before I was going to go home, somebody yelled, "Oh, man, they did it again." And I said, "Did what again?" And they said, "Well, it looks like somebody has put a bomb in the World Trade Center." The words were hardly out of his mouth before one of the cab drivers called us, who was down there, and said, "You're not going to believe this. A plane had hit the World Trade Center." But before we could even react to that, we then found out that there was a second plane, and it became quite obvious that was something very serious. I mean, we were at war. What was going on? Most of the cab drivers just left to go home. People all over the city started trudging their way home. Not until the jet fighter planes came over the city at about, let's say, 45 minutes later, and people were standing in the street cheering the planes as if it was some kind of a John Wayne movie, did we feel a little bit more secure. And then that night, I said to She Who Must Be Obeyed, "Can I work tonight?" Because I wanted to be part of what was going on. And I did. And when I got back to the garage the next morning, I said, "Everybody's dead." And they said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And I said, "Well, I haven't seen anybody working at any hospital in this city tonight. There was no triage, there were no ambulances, there were anything." And at that point, I thought about 25,000 people had been killed. I was amazed to find out that so many had gotten out alive. And that is one of the miracles of that whole thing.
One of the things we're hopefully going to establish today on the show is the enormity of the World Trade Centers. I find it very hard to describe how tall these buildings were amongst already enormous buildings. It is hard to explain, isn't it?
Oh, it's just unbelievable. Each building was 110 stories tall. At the height of the day, you would have 50,000 tenants and 200,000 visitors. So if these guys had waited a few hours longer, there probably would have been 250,000 people in those two buildings. They were just absolutely awesome. And by the way, their destruction cost New York City 25 million square feet of office space, which is the same as all of Miami's office space, the same as all of Atlanta's office space. So that's the reason why it has to be rebuilt.
And the other difficulty is there's only one way to build in New York, and that's up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. But one of the suggestions has been made that instead of doing two 110-story buildings, they might do 4 50-story buildings. So we'll see how that works out.
For you, though, is New York ever going to be the same again?
If you look around you at all these people here, both tourists and residents, nobody looks very worried now because it's time to move on. And now we feel that our government is doing what it wasn't doing before, which it now has its eyes open, to see that this type of stuff may not happen again.
I've been here a couple of days now, and I've got the sense that very quickly after September the 11th, people began to get some form of normality, and people were very resilient and moved on very quickly. Is that the case?
Oh, no question about it, because that's what New Yorkers are. There's a certain beat, a certain rhythm, a certain action here. That keeps moving, and because of that, that's the way New York operates. We've gone through every possible emotion, every possible human endeavor in the last 6 months, and here we are. Hey, it's a beautiful sunny day.